Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about CharTeaming player characters in Dungeons & Dragons. What are you talking about, Scott? CharTeaming. You're right. It's a term you've never heard before because it didn't exist before, and I am bringing it to the fore right now. I am inventing CharTeaming for Dungeons & Dragons because Dungeons & Dragons needs it, okay? All right, so what is CharTeaming? CharTeaming is the idea that the creation, the maintenance, and the running of a player character should not be done by one person because it's foolish, antiquated, and no longer effective. Okay? All right, so now where did I learn this? I learned this at a goat race. That's not a metaphor. So on May 7th, 2023, I attended a goat race in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And the goat race had 45 goats, and these are physical animals that have horns. Goats, you know what chews the grass, right? Goats. So 45 goats were raced in the 2023 goat race, and in the 2023 spring goat race, what we saw was specifically 9 heats of 5 goats each, and each goat was introduced at the beginning, and the factoid was given about so that you could learn the racers. And then each of those 5 teams of those 5 heats of goats, excuse me, each one of those 5 heats of goats, there would be a gold medalist and a silver medalist. They would advance to the semifinals. All the semifinals went down, and the winner goats raced each other. And then in the final, Daisy and Princess Jenny raced each other, and these goats tied. And because the crowd shouted one more race, there was literally a tiebreaker race. And I saw Princess Jenny, the most winningest goat in all of goat racing, win. She has won 4 years in a row. She has won 4 years at the 2023 goat races, and she is the Michael Jordan of goats, right? Now, what's really fascinating was I watched literally a dozen plus individual goat races, and what happened no less than 4 times was that these goats would outrun their handlers. The way the goat race worked was the goat was on a leash, and there's no pushing, pulling, or carrying. The goat has to run toward the finish line. They have to start at the starting line, and then they have to run to the finish line on their own volition. And the goat cannot be pulled, pushed, or carried, right? Also, the handler cannot cross the finish line first. So what happened was I saw at least 4, maybe as high as 6 this happened to, goats that were trained all year and were ready to run. And then what happened was those goats lost the race because their handler could not run the 120 feet of the race fast as the goat, and they fell, right? So 4 to 6 times, different handlers fell, right? And the goat was fine and was racing toward the finish line, but the handler could not keep up, right? And I realized why this was. The goat handlers in every circumstance was a wonderful, kind person who loved this goat and cared for this goat and maintained this goat, fed them, provided their shelter, talked to them every day so they weren't lonely, and got them ready all year for the race, right? But the reality is some of these people who were great goat lovers and great goat maintainers were not good runners. They literally were like men, women who were just not built for it. They didn't have long legs. They weren't agile. They really weren't ready, right? And they weren't ready for what this goat race has been going on for 21 years, and it has a veneer of fun that is not real. The people who win this every year do not see this as fun. They are winning a goat race so that their goat is a champion in front of 4,000 people. 4,000 people attended a goat race. The goat race I go to, right, this goat race I went to is at capacity. They literally cannot have more people attend next year because they would need to get a new venue. Like, they are literally sold out for the goat race. And this is what you know this is Scott Garibay's jam. Things that are supposed to be fun, that ain't even remotely about fun, right? This goat race is no longer about fun. Princess Jenny is an athlete, right? And she is cared for so that she can win a goat race in front of 4,000 people. And it has nothing to do with fun, in my humble opinion. Nothing. And the people who show up for fun get wrecked, right? They fall and they stumble and they look like fools. Guess what? That's what you look like at your Dungeons & Dragons table, right? Like, you're falling behind your goat, right? Like, you're running for fun and you're accomplishing nothing, right? And the people are like, oh, I'm going to use Dungeons & Dragons as a tool. They sail past you. And they get to the finish line and they stand next to their goat and they said, I did something. I achieved something. I get the glory. I get the benefit because the goal was never fun, right? So here's the thing. Next year, those handlers are going to have to realize, oh, I have a great trained goat, but I can't run this thing. I need to get an actual runner. And that's my point. Creating a player character and maintaining that player character and making sure they have good choices made on leveling. The person doing that may not be the best person to run that character. So I am talking about CharTeaming, right? Creating teams to maintain and run Dungeons & Dragons characters. And you're like, Scott, that's ridiculous. It is ridiculous at your table because nothing's ever going to happen at your table. You're playing for fun and nothing that happens at that table matters. I'm talking about Joe Manganiola's table. I'm talking about my table, right? Where we are using Dungeons & Dragons to transform our lives and transform the cultures we live in. At that point, yes, you get things that happen that don't happen at a regular Dungeons & Dragons table. We've already seen this at Critical Role, right? Matthew Mercer would dismiss players. When I saw this for the first time, I was like, what? He's just going to have that person sit in a room, and what are they going to do, right? They showed up and they don't even get to sit at the table. It's different level, right? Like, it's just a different level of Dungeons & Dragons. And that's what I'm talking about every day, right? So yes, CharTeaming seems ridiculous to you because nothing happens at your table. No lives are changed at your table. You never grow, you're never challenged, you never change, right? You never improve because of Dungeons & Dragons. But when you realize that you're in a Dungeons & Dragons and you can improve as a person, you're willing to do things you weren't willing to do before. You're willing to create and maintain a player character and never run them. You're willing to run a player character that you never created and that you don't even make this decision between leveling. I'm talking about a different Dungeons & Dragons, a better Dungeons & Dragons, a powerful Dungeons & Dragons, an epic and meaningful Dungeons & Dragons. That's what I talk about every single day, and that's why you're here. Every single word of that is my opinion, my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.